Yeah, that's such a trap. Such an artist trap to be hard on ourselves like that. I've been there for sure.
The trick is not to let it get in the way of actually doing stuff.
Yeah. Does it get in the way for you?
No. I've definitely found that I'm enjoying singing more than I used to. And I like singing before. But just I led some from prayers Friday night for a group of people, and they didn't know me from Adam. And I looked at them like, so do you want the soulful or the quick versions?
Yeah.
They're like, soulful. And then I started and I wasn't looking, because the first blessing you say you kind of cover your eyes for Shabbat. And yeah, they were like, I look up and they're like,
oh, were they surprised at your performance?
Yes.
In a good way or in a bad way? Oh, okay.
One, people don't usually expect somebody with the title rabbi to be able to sing.
Really?
Yeah.
But it's such an integral part of being a rabbi, isn't it?
No, not the singing part.
It's not.
It's an integral part of community life, but oftentimes they end up hiring somebody to do the singing part.
Okay.
Which is another issue. There's politics.
Yeah. How long have you been a rabbi for?
5 years now.
Okay.
Actually, almost slightly longer than 5 years. I was ordained in May of 2019.
I feel like that's not very long.
I mean, it's
long. It's
half a decade.
That's true.
But I was in school longer than I've been a rabbi for it.
Sure.
So.
And you're so young though, right? How old are you?
Oh no, I'm 41.
You're 41?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. How old did you think I was?
I thought you were like 18 or something. Because you go to community college with everybody.
I have 2.5 master's degrees in ordination.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I
mean,
I am not the Doogie Howser of Judaism, I promise you.
I'm just so in the dark about that whole process, and I just grouped you in with everybody else at community college, I suppose.
I also tend to get along well with diverse age ranges.
Yeah.
It's actually part of my job skills.
Yeah, I thought you were like between 18 and like 23 or something.
Nope.
Do you get that a lot?
Depends on where.
Yeah, the context.
Like, people usually do think I'm younger than I am, and they would probably think I'm way younger if I didn't have the beard.
So you have a 2 master's degree, and what did you?
So I have a master's in Middle Eastern Studies from Ben Gurion University of the Negev in Israel. I have a master's in Rabbinic from Rabbinical School. I'm ordained, which is another element of it, and I was about half a thesis away from a master's in education. Kind of got bottleneck there, though.
That sounds fascinating. What is Masters of Middle Eastern Studies like in Israel? Give me like a background of it.
So the program I was on was an international master's. I think part of it is that the more people that they graduate in Israel, the more money they get from the state. But essentially the program was, you go there, you study Arabic. And so I have about 1.5 years of Arabic language instruction under my belt. But you study economics, history, politics, security, international relations. One of the teachers at the time was Benny Morris, who is a kind of prominent figure in Israeli history, especially 1948. And addressed he did a lot of scholarship on the origins of the Palestinian refugee problem. I had some very good teachers, and I had some very interesting teachers. They were not always the same.
Okay. Do you have any, what stands out? Like any stories that stand out?
I had one professor his specialty was Ottoman history, and specifically expressions of sexuality and gender in Ottoman mysticism.
Very specific.
Yeah, but he branches out. But for me, it was eye-opening, because so much of my education through high school and college, there's always and then there's the Ottoman Empire, but it's never really brought up. And so like when I was in high school, a lot of my European history instruction was like, all these things are happening, but they never really explained, like there were things that were happening that you're like, why are the Italians doing that? Like, why is Genoa doing this? Why is Venice doing this? What's this weird stuff going on in Poland? And then when you realize like, oh, right, because there was a whole other empire on the eastern edge of Europe that was doing stuff, and they were having a major impact on what's happening.
Yeah.
So it definitely filled in a lot of gaps. And I also had a class on basically travel literature in the Holy Land. And so we touched on, issues of like Orientalism as an academic discipline, but also just reading like different travel logs and kind of, and also seeing how it mapped onto the way that like European and American geography is described and named. If you've ever been to Pennsylvania, a lot of the place names are basically taken straight from Bible. You go through Lebanon, Goshen, there's just Salem's all over the place. And one of the explanations for that is, especially in like the 18th and 19th centuries, there was a strong push from Christian communities to kind of claim where they was the Holy Land. So there's a lot of mapping biblical places onto England and North America, trying to like live out the story, just getting rid of all those, that pesky Jewish problem when it comes to like, who is this talking about? So like just kind of getting more of a sense and seeing how it plays out in tourism today, and that was a very interesting set of classes.
Wow. Back to what you were saying before about missing pieces of history in your program, don't you feel that it's characteristic of pretty much every education program, because you can't learn everything, right? So it's going to have its own narrative, its own things that it focuses on that might portray, in this case, history in a certain way. Did you feel that way when you were in school?
Well, by definition, any history is going to be a story that has a particular perspective. We're kind of like, academia goes back and forth on the place of the author, like the role of the author and the voice of the author in the work. But as somebody who does have some training as an educator, my attitude is, if you're transparent about your position and you're being clear about what the gaps are, like, maybe not like to a 10-year-old being like, so we're going to not talk about this particular thing because of these reasons, but the parent should know, it should be transparent. I think we do a disservice when we're trying to claim objectivity when there isn't any, but I also think that not being objective is not an inherent problem if we're honest about it. Because there's a phrase in Jewish text, in Rabbinic text, that's kind of become my favorite phrase ever. It's devar acher. So literally it translates to like another thing or another word. What it does in writing is it's basically like so everything we talked about, all the arguments we made above, like up to this point, like those are great, but now we're going to go back to that beginning and try it again. So you've got this version of interpretation, you've got this version of interpretation, and they're both on the same page, and they're not structured like this is the approved one, this is not. This is one take, this is another take. And I think we would benefit as a society if we got more comfortable with the devar acher approach to stories and history and knowledge. Which is like, sometimes you gotta be open to two different and not necessarily compatible understandings, because both might be true. And it does help a lot to be able to keep more than one thing in your head at a time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. It's so easy to not see the other side. It takes a lot of work, I think, for people to have an open mind and consider other perspectives other than their own. but it needs to start in the education, I think.
And I think, but it's also important to recognize it doesn't invalidate a particular perspective for other ones to be present.
Yeah.
Like and it's not just a smorgasbord of like, you got to pick one or the other and that's it. Like just the act of trying to understand something from more than one perspective inherently builds your understanding of that thing. Like even if you don't buy the other version, knowing that it exists, knowing its logic, understanding how someone could think that should be reinforcing what you think is correct, rather than diminishing it. But also kind of tempering your confidence with like another reasonable person could come to a different conclusion, and that's okay.
Okay, so what was your master's in rabbinics? Is that what it is?
Yeah, master's in rabbinic studies, or that's basically the master's degree they kind of need to give us because we're in school for 5+ years.
Okay.
At a graduate level.
A gen ed type of thing.
Well, more of like it's just kind of acknowledging that we've had. So the school I went to, we studied. We had about 21 to 23 grad credits a semester.
This is in Israel.
No, this was in LA.
Oh, okay. But the other degree was...
The other degree was in Israel.
Okay.
But that was a program through the school.
I got you. Okay.
Kind of like a study abroad, but for... at the time, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I literally rolled dice. And it came up a 4, which was study in Israel. I think 1 to 3 was like go to Spain or Costa Rica to learn Spanish. Like that was the that was the degree to which I was like, I have no idea what I want to do. I play role-playing games as almost a side job level of hobby. I'm gonna trust the dice. And I rolled a 6-sided die and it came up a 4.
Okay. And 4 you had labeled that to be go to
Israel. I think it was 1 and 4 was go to Israel. 2 and 5 was Costa Rica. 4 and 6 was teach English in Japan. Or 3 and 6 was teach English in Japan.
Yeah.
I think that was how I broke it down.
I mean, everybody has those types of traditions. What is it, the I Ching, where you throw out a bunch of sticks and see how it arranges?
Yeah. I think it was less for me divination about what my path should be, and more of like I don't know how to decide between these 3 options in a way that makes sense. So I'm going to just randomly like give chance a hand.
Sure.
Which, if you play enough role-playing games, you learn to value the randomizer.
Do you believe that in coincidences, like that, like there is actually a chance, or that you are divinely guided in a way?
Depends on the day. Most of the time, I definitely go into like a more rational thing of like, look, in an infinite universe, everything will happen an infinite number of times. Chance is chance, things happen. Like, I don't necessarily ascribe intent or purpose to everything that happens, because I think that way lies madness. And also starts turning guilt in on the people who are the victims of chance. Like when you're comforting somebody, the last thing you should say is everything happens for a reason, or they're in a better place now. Like these are like ascribing intent means like the instinct to assign, intent or deliberateness so that things don't seem random. I think can lead to more harm than good. So no, I generally I'm like, no, that isn't how the world works. My own personal theology is that God does not intercede in like that kind of way. But also, once in a while I have an experience where like feels like I was supposed to do this, or I survived for a reason. And I try and give that space too.
What does it take to become a rabbi, and how did you choose that path?
So it depends on what part of the Jewish world you're in or you want to be a part of. I would kind of describe where I am is in the kind of more liberal denominations or liberal section. But there's a lot of different pathways. In the non-Orthodox world in the U.S., there's a couple denominations, the largest being the Reform movement, the second, then the conservative movement. There's a Reconstructionist movement, a renewal movement, a secular humanist Judaism group. There's a lot of ways, but kind of the most common in the last century is going to the seminaries of a denomination. Kind of like in Judaism, you define a denomination in that you train your own rabbis, and the synagogues that are part of your denomination will hire them first. That's kind of like how you build a denomination. But for the most part, at least where I went, a lot of the students had either had a Jewish background growing up. Like I went to a Jewish day school in LA from about 5th grade until the end of high school. Typically, you need to have worked on your Hebrew because the language is the hardest thing to pick up quickly. Also, generally good idea to have some idea of what it's like to live an observant Jewish life. Going to synagogue, celebrating holidays, the attire, that kind of thing. I think a lot of people who become rabbis nowadays have their own kind of drive or interest long before they think about school. Typically, you need to have a bachelor's degree to be able to apply. If you want to be a cantor, you also probably need to have, from what I understand, the typical person who applies to cantorial school probably has a bachelor's in music.
Okay, so the bachelor's to become a rabbi could be any bachelor's?
Yes. I know people who had science degrees, English degrees. I had a bachelor's in anthropology. So I was ordained in 2019. I had a pulpit in Arizona. That was kind of like my first job out of school. I was actually hired on the contingency that I graduated, which is not uncommon for first. There's a lot of effort made to make sure that new rabbis have a job. It's a very expensive process. We pay for it out of pocket. Good idea to make sure your graduates have employment.
What's the expensive part? Paying the rabbis or putting them through the education?
So, at least in the non-Orthodox world, and in some parts of the Orthodox world, rabbinic students are expected to pay their tuition, and there's also living expenses. And since the majority of rabbinical schools are in LA or New York, I think LA, New York, and Boston are the 3 major areas, and Philadelphia. So we're not talking, we're talking some of the most expensive places to live in the world. And you're going to school full time, and you're probably working a side job, and you have all the religious stuff that you're dealing with. And studying for rabbinical school is a lot, because you're learning how to read and translate text. You're learning how to do officiating, so pastoral care, administrative work, history, Bible, Talmud, there's a lot. So I think when I was in the kind of predicted cost per student was around $250,000.
Oh, wow.
But that was including living expenses in LA.
Sure.
Which was significantly more than the tuition.
It's like a 4-year program?
5 minimum. I was in for 7, but I took a year off in that to deal with some mental health issues.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a lot of strain from school. And, this is not, rabbinical school is not a just learn this skill and don't worry about anything else. There's a lot of introspection, a lot of struggling with yourself and who you are and what you believe. And so it's not just school stress. It's also personal.
Sure.
Existential even.
What stands out to you about that time? Can you share any of those struggles that you had to go through?
So on the positive, it was always a wonder when I went into a space as like an intern or like a trainee, and people were already calling me rabbi, treating me as that. It was definitely like, okay, the title, the role, like it's a thing.
Out of respect.
Yeah. And so, it takes a little time to adapt to being treated that way. And it also takes a little time to realize the responsibilities of that. Going from like just a person to people are going to watch where you shop and what you eat and all those things. It can be a lot. Honestly, probably the greatest challenges for me though was just the absolutely overwhelming workload. In grad school, you're usually taking about 12 credits a semester because there's a lot of work that goes into around it, a lot of research, a lot of reading on your own, writing, that kind of thing. So when I talk about 21 to 23 credits, and all of it is like translation work or philosophy and theology, or like just, you're churning your brain in multiple languages that you're struggling to understand. It's exhausting. I actually had a point where I was sleeping about 4 hours a night. I'd get up, drive to school which took about an hour because LA traffic. Be in school from about 8 a.m., 7:30, 8 a.m. because of morning prayers until about 4 or 5. Then drive home in traffic, get home, and then have, probably 6 to 8 hours of homework that I needed to get through. And that, so not a lot of time to cook, no time for exercise. And if you were tired, you needed a nap, that's time that you're going to have to make up on the other end. So I ended up, going to bed at midnight and waking up at 4 a.m.
You did that for years?
I did that for about a year. And had probably my first real nervous breakdown because I was replacing every hour of sleep short of 8 with a cup of coffee. Like I would show up to school, I'd make a full carafe of coffee, 16 cup in the morning, pour some into a travel mug and the rest into a thermos. And throughout the morning, I drink the whole thing.
Are the educators aware of this lifestyle, of this issue, or is that part of like paying your dues?
At one point, I mentioned because it was a topic that I brought up a lot because I do have a concern about people's mental health and stability. I have had responses as wide-ranging as if we try and do anything to help with time management or mental health, people will resent it because that's just more stuff on their plate. To this is the rabbinic life, you got to get used to it.
But you got through it.
I survived. I will admit I was much happier. I'm much happier as a working rabbi than I was as a rabbi student.
What's that like to be a working rabbi? What's your day like?
So right now I'm not working full time, so it's a very different situation for me. When I was on a pulpit, it was an interesting experience, especially for a first job, because I went from being an intern and basically having to be professional without the status or income of being a professional to being the person in charge. So it was the jump from the guy who doesn't have an office and is expected to do everything to somebody who has their own office and can can dictate their own lifestyle. But I tended to take it seriously. I'm single. I was living alone. I had cats. So I kind of dove in head first. And over time, I figured out how to kind of keep my pacing. But I'd basically say any meetings start at 10 a.m. and I will shut off at 10 p.m. So a lot of the time, if there wasn't a meeting or an agenda or something, I would usually use it to kind of either do paperwork, read, try and, prep for sermons or anything that I needed to do coming up. But also just being on call. and being able to say, like, if anybody wanted to meet or talk, as long as it was between these hours, I would say yes.
And you touched on this before, but what are some of the duties as a rabbi?
It can vary from place to place and contract to contract. For me, it was, and I actually discussed this with the board, the synagogue board, on my first day. Thinking about, like, how do they want me to divide my time, and what ended up kind of being categories were pastoral care, like, visiting people who were sick or checking up on people, making sure that everybody in the community was doing okay. Also, writing checks out of my discretionary fund to make sure somebody could make rent. There were a lot of times where I'd, like, just drive out and with a check or cash that I drew from the account and just gave it to people in the community. Sometimes...
What's the criteria of giving somebody money like that? Like, how do you decide who gets money and who doesn't?
If they ask, like, if they need it and it's reasonable. Like, I didn't have enough in my in the discretionary fund to, like, be like, I got your mortgage, don't worry about it.
Right.
But I think the point of it is to be able to have money available for somebody that people know they can go to if they need help discreetly.
Was there ever a time when you had to reject somebody's request?
I sometimes had to manage expectations, but a lot of the time that was more checking in with the synagogue president, who was kind of my go-to person for synagogue issues, and just making sure, like, hey, does this sound like idiot, check me here. I had a very good relationship with the president of my synagogue, partly because he took on the job right around April of 2020, and we were all in the same boat with the pandemic.
It sounds like a pretty cool community.
I have no bad feelings about them. It was a challenge for me because I wasn't from Phoenix.
Okay.
And so and I'd only had about 6 months to settle into new job, new city.
It's even hotter out there.
Yeah. Oh, this is not hot. This is just be aware of the heat temperature. Unless it gets above 110, it's like, yeah, whatever.
Right. What are some of the other things that you had to do as a rabbi?
Leading services, like, I was the person for ritual stuff. Every Friday night I had to have something, like, a little bit of teaching prepared for that night and a longer one for Saturday. I'm standing up there singing and doing crowd work and trying to get people interested and involved and inspired. Every week. I think in 3 years, I missed 6 Shabbats because of time off. 6, like, I had my vacation time, but, like, maybe 2 or 3 total from being sick.
What's a Shabbat?
So Shabbat is the day of rest. In Judaism, we mark that Friday night to Saturday night. In religious calendar, Jewish days are from sundown to sundown. So on Shabbat, just before sundown, we light candles, we mark the day, and on Shabbat, we're supposed to refrain from work, creative labor. So Rabbinic tradition has kind of made that mean, like, we don't cook on Shabbat. We do all of our cooking before Shabbat and kind of carry it through. We try not to do business or do commerce. A lot of the time is supposed to be spent in community, singing, like, just hanging out, eating. One of my favorite traditions is called the Shabbos Shaluf, which means a nap. So, like, and how many religious traditions that say once a week, like, there's a day you're supposed to take a nap during the day? Like, no, really. Like, after Saturday morning services and the Kiddush lunch, one of the most common things people will do is go home and lie down for an hour or two.
I wonder if it just reminds me that I think on average there's like one day a week where I'll just totally check out. Like even if I wanted to, I could, like yesterday was like that. I had tons of stuff to do, wanted to prep more for this, but I just couldn't focus. It was hot out. My AC was, whatever. And yeah, maybe I have a little Jewish in me or something.
I think
Or it's a biological thing.
at least in the Western world, I think the Shabbat, the Sabbath, I think it's part of the reason why the concept of a weekend exists. And I think this is coming out more and more in contemporary culture, that we've lived in this world where it's all about the grind, right? Like, just hustle. And hustle culture is not healthy.
No, it's not.
It can actually destroy people over time. And so people are kind of finding and reconnecting to these ideas of rest as not just the thing you do when you can't do the work, but of an active choice to do things that replenish. And Jewish tradition, it's the emphasis is on not doing manual labor, not worrying about all the things in the world. And so one interpretation I hear sometimes that I like is Shabbat is a reminder that the world will go on without you. That you can take a day off, you can step away. Yeah. As much as you think everything needs you at all times, it probably doesn't. Most people are not so essential that somebody isn't going to pick up what needs to be done from their workload. Right? So if you're not feeling well, you can stay home. You should rest. If you're burning out, do things to not burn out.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, what you're saying, I feel is you're talking directly at me, which is totally what I need to hear sometimes. But it's complicated, but yeah, I get it for sure.
I need the reminders all the time too.
Yeah.
I have to remind my mom, who's recovering from major injury.
Yeah.
That, hey, it takes time. No, you're not going to be back to 100% after breaking a hip.
Yeah.
You need a year.
I mean, I used to be a lot worse before, and it would tear me up. I'm in a much better place now. Fortunately, I have the stability and the support to take things slowly. I mean, I always did, I suppose, but I just didn't see it that way before.
There's a lot of things in life that if you just kind of settle in with it, the knots will untie, you'll find your way through.
Yeah.
I think especially with arts, if you're trying to learn an instrument or, learn a new skill, sometimes you're not just going to pick it up instantly. Sometimes you just got to sit with it and work it, and you're going to plateau. But if you're consistent, you'll get through.
Yeah.
I think we forget that progress is not always linear, and also that sometimes you just kind of got to lean in and just let things go. If you have food on your plate and the people around you are okay, it's not the end of the world if you don't make progress today.
I wanted to go back to what you were saying before. After you graduated from school, 5-year program, or in your case 7. The organization, was it the synagogue or the school?
Yes, I was at a synagogue.
Sets you up with a position as a rabbi?
So in the denomination I am a part of, the conservative movement, when I was graduating, they typically set up kind of an interview week for all of the graduating students. And synagogues in the denomination or affiliated with the denomination generally are they have to send if they're looking for a new rabbi or an assistant job or for new rabbis, they send representatives to either LA or New York, wherever they're hosting the event or the week. And for that week, rabbinic students line up interviews. We take a list and we're yeah, we'd like to interview here, 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 and here. And depending on your preferences or how hard you're looking to work that week, you could have 1 or 2 interviews, you could have 30.
Wow.
And basically that's kind of like it's almost like speed dating for new rabbis.
Yeah, it
and
sounds very competitive.
It can be, although I think at least I hold, and I think enough of the people I was with at the time held the opinion that it wasn't about being the best, it was about finding a place that matched. The relationship between a rabbi and a congregation is much more like dating than it is like employment. Because you're trying to find somebody who's,
Employment is kind of like that too.
Yeah. But especially with rabbis, because it's possible that this is going to be your world for 20, 30, 40 years. And rabbis move from where they are to where their job is going to be. So, you're asking somebody to pick up their entire life, and if they have family and kids, like they have to move them. So it's an investment from the rabbi, and it's an investment from the synagogue, because they're taking a chance on somebody who's new, and hoping that they're actually up for the job and that they fit with the community, and that there's an interview process.
Yeah.
And after that speed dating, then they give callbacks to the people they'd like to, that they connected with or want to see more. Usually rabbinic, usually interviews for a pulpit position can last between 3 and 5 days. Because, when I interviewed for my job in Arizona, they didn't have to fly me out because I wanted to drive. I like to drive. It's nice. But I went out, they put me up in a hotel, and basically because for me, it was a 5-day interview, because it was the first interview night was Purim, and they asked if I wanted to be there for a holiday. I'm like, sure. So I spent 5 days interviewing, and in that was, I led services and Purim celebrations for them, after having met them about an hour before. So I was having to manage a room of 50 kids and 100 adults. Just in the deep end. And then there was interviews with different subsections of the community, seniors, teens, parents, and then there's a town hall, and people were asking questions, and the board had to be like, you're not allowed to ask that because that's illegal. How old are you? Are you married? What's your sexual orientation?
Yeah.
What are your politics? These were all questions I was asked.
Yeah.
So you're really getting grilled by a wide section of people.
The whole community.
Yeah, and they're looking at everything. And I think there were people who didn't want me to be the rabbi because they thought I was too fat. And there were people who didn't want me to be the rabbi because they thought I was too liberal. And there's people who didn't want me to be the rabbi because they found an Onion article that made fun of Benjamin Netanyahu on my Facebook page. And then there were a bunch of people that wanted me because they liked my answers, they liked my personality. You're under a microscope. It is very much a public position.
Yeah, you're a public figure.
After I got hired, I rated a coffee with the mayor. And I was representing the synagogue in various community events. And I ended up getting fairly deep in with the local Latter-day Saints community, because it's the LDS church is very big in that part of Phoenix. And
how was that? How was working with them or collaborating with them?
It's always interesting because you're always kind of looking for you're always keeping an eye out are we doing this because we're colleagues and community members together? Is this happening because of an odd philo-Semitism?
What is philo-Semitism?
Breaking it down is love of Jews. But there's a certain, but it can also be sometimes it can be fetishized. Oh, the Jews, these ancient people. I'm like, guys, I have Netflix like you do. I am not a representation of ancient Israelite Judaism here. Yeah. I am a 2020s Jew. Like I have trouble with Facebook just like you do. But no, but that's just a general issue in being a Jewish leader working with other religious traditions. It's like, is this because they want to work with another religious tradition or you as clergy, or is this like a fulfilling something in their religious ideology that they need to like lift up the Jew in order to bring about the end times?
Yeah, in any collaboration, there's like a wariness of what another person's agenda may be. I assume in religious contexts, it's very heightened.
It can be. But also, you know what? Sometimes you just kind of take it because you need it. Particularly when like issues of anti-Semitism pop up. Just having a call from like, a reverend from down the street can mean a lot. Like even like, you don't have to be perfect friends to be friends.
Was there anything that surprised you once you got to this point where you're meeting the mayor and you had your own congregation, your own pulpit is what it's called? Is there anything that surprised you?
Honestly, I was surprised at how competent I was from the get-go. Like, it still is weird to me that people will look to me for like advice, support, and like take it seriously. Because in my head, I'm just the kid who's been in school for a long time.
I thought you were like 19. So that's what you were to me since I've known you, yeah.
But no, I'm a whole ass adult. and like, going back
now
to
that I think about it, it doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you be a 19-year-old rabbi? I just never even just like put two and two together.
Yeah, the youngest rabbis I know who are working would be about 27. And that's a baby.
Yeah.
Like that is somebody who like even though I'm sitting there like, have you had the life experience to do this?
Yeah.
That was actually a thing that came up for me when I graduated college, and I realized like I wanted to be a rabbi, and everybody told me I should be a rabbi, but I didn't feel like I had my act together or had lived enough. And so I kind of took like a decade of walkabout. Like I'm like, all right, let me see if there's anything else in this world I'd be happier doing. And it turns out that, I have great respect for people who are doing janitorial work, who, are doing like call center stuff, because I did all that. I worked as a barista at Starbucks at one point. So I'm incredibly kind to the baristas I encounter today because I know what their lives are like. But yeah, nothing really, like nothing clicked in the same way. I think I only really committed when I realized like, oh, I might really like being a physical therapist. So that gives me permission to go be a rabbi because it's not the only choice I have.
Interesting. Yeah, I think probably, in my opinion, I see we don't really attain wisdom until we're like 40 or 50, where we really have that life experience. Everybody's
got wisdom to share. Like, a 4-year-old is going to have insight into things that none of us do. So I like anybody can have wisdom, and there's something to be said for the energy of a 20-year-old. We can both attest to like there are definitely some things that like people we encounter on a daily basis. Like they got energy that we do not. They want things and they have hope that isn't beaten down by experience or realities. And I think that's absolutely essential for us to function. Like my dream is to be in my 70s, sitting on my lawn and seeing kids walking by, saying and doing things I have no idea what the hell it is, but just be like, you go kids. I don't know what you're talking about or why, but you do what you got to do. I think like I believe in you. Also, get off my lawn. But I think it's a combination of, I think there's also a lot to be said for living, like having your heart broken, losing people that matter to you, not winning, like actually having serious like defeats or setbacks or, or realizing realizing you were cringe.
Yeah.
Like if you don't look back and your younger self be like, that was a little cringe. Like that was fine, but like it's a little cringe.
I think every moment that's not now is cringe to me that I look at. I mean, this podcast will probably be cringe in like 10 years, but
but that's how it's supposed to be. What is like the whole point is that we want the world to keep moving.
Yeah.
We want growth. We want change. We want what is cool now to be seen as like old man stuff in 20 years. Because if it's not, like, how terrifying would it be if a 16-year-old today talked and acted and thought like you did?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't that be bad?
Depends who you ask.
Like, I am a religious leader and I think that's terrible. Like, I want... One thing that I really enjoy about being a rabbi is that I don't have to worry about conformity. Like at the end of the day, if a kid challenges me, that's the best outcome. I don't want obedience in my work. I want challenge. I want engagement. I want to be part of a community that's wrestling with what they should do and what is right and wrong.
What are some of the difficulties that you faced from the community? What was challenging about it?
In my community, especially, the community was politically diverse. It's Arizona, so it is very much a purple place, and I am very much not in the middle in my own politics and my own views of how society should function. And oftentimes that could be a potential clash with members of my community. And so one of the challenges I always had was making sure that I always kept room in my persona to be approachable to everybody. That no matter what I thought personally, that I could make the distinction between I, Herschel the person, and I, Herschel the rabbi. Because, and this was a lesson I learned from one of my mentors when I was working in LA, was always be clear when it's your opinion versus the tradition. Like, do not attempt to claim your interpretation as what the tradition says, because Jewish text and tradition belongs to every Jew. So anything I do that cuts that off for somebody or makes somebody think it's cut off is failing in my job. So instead, if I was like, I think I even on the bima, the stage during a service, if I was giving a sermon, I would even say now I want to be clear, this is my opinion, not the text. I am saying this, not the text. And then gave my opinion. Because, as strongly as I might feel about, issues of social justice or serving the unhoused or, making sure everyone's okay or issues of politics or international affairs, except when it comes to text, I don't have that expertise. I don't get to claim to be the authority here. The only authority I have comes from the fact that I'm comfortable with the text that we hold dear. So I needed, making sure people knew what the rabbi was saying is the voice of Judaism, and what the rabbi was saying is just themselves. That's an essential distinction. And it kind of comes back to that, transparency and clarity of intent. My goal is never to fool anybody. I want people to, even if they disagree with me, I want to help people have an opinion that is backed by thought and consideration and actually have gone through the ringer of ethical considerations. If somebody can honestly say that, if they consider the ethical implications and we can talk about those, and I will respect any informed opinion that somebody has. Even if I disagree with it, even if I think it's abhorrent. I can at least be but they come to it honestly. It's the talking point culture, it's the obsession with winning that usually gets me.
Do you, is there anything that you would change about the whole, everything about the practice, about the synagogue, about any pet peeves that you have about being a rabbi?
And as far as being a rabbi, I think there has been too much placed on the person who has the title. We ask a rabbi to be everything to everyone at all times. Like, it's kind of a running joke is that, a synagogue is looking for a new rabbi. Here are the requirements. We want you to be we want you to be 30 with 40 years of experience. We want you to have to be a good family man or woman with like 3 kids and a dog, and also you need to be working 24/7, right? Like, it's you need to model Jewish living, but also you can never not work. Right? Like these.
Except for on Shabbat.
No. We work on Shabbat.
Oh, you do?
Oh yeah, we have to lead services.
Oh, okay.
But it's not creative labor. It's praying.
Yeah.
It's allowed stuff,
Okay.
and technically we're not paid for Shabbat. We're paid for the rest of the week.
What is the pay like?
It depends.
What's the range?
For a pulpit position, tends to pay more. I think usually starts around like high 5 figures. And like nowadays I've seen starting salaries like somewhere in like the 120 range. And keep in mind, it is a 5-year training program to get there.
Sure.
And a lot of the time,
A very expensive path.
yeah, and oftentimes in expensive areas.
Yeah.
Jews tend to congregate in large populations, so cities tend to be very expensive. So there's a little bit of that.
How does the synagogue make money?
So it depends on the community. Probably the most common model in the 20th century was a dues model, where right before high holidays you're supposed to pay your dues for the year or make your pledge, and congregants will do that, and then
It's like one payment per person a year.
so usually it's family units. And sometimes if a synagogue is using that, they'll usually have like student pricing if somebody, or young professional pricing, because typically paying the equivalent of a two adult 2 child family is going to be different than paying for like a single 20 something. Not that there's a lot of 20 somethings that go to synagogue, but
Is it similar to like tithing in Christianity, or it's like 10%?
no. Most of the time it's like either a certain number that they're trying to reach. But honestly, most synagogues I know, it's pay what you can. I am personally an advocate of the voluntary dues model, simply because it takes the judgment part of the synagogue about what somebody can afford out of the equation, and lets it just be what people can pay what they can. I also think it's good to say, like, this is what we would need from every family unit to cover this budget for this year. So please keep that in mind when you consider what you can give.
So all the finances are very transparent, what the money's going.
Well, it should be. Not always, but it should be, in my opinion.
Yeah. Was it that way with yours?
Sometimes. I think the synagogue I was at has relied on volunteers for a very long time, and volunteer bookkeepers. So a lot of the time, like, things get, when you're relying on volunteers, you can't expect the same accountability that you can for paid professionals.
Yeah.
But most synagogues will do a dues model, and also, like, a lot of things get done because of a few families with deep pockets who basically underwrite the synagogue, which, depending on who's doing that, can be no strings attached, or can be, I expect to have the rabbi on speed dial. Depends on who's giving and why. So like, capital campaigns often rely on donors. There's usually a gala every year to raise money. The religious school sometimes will do fundraising for itself. Also, training for bar and bat mitzvah tends to be a way that synagogues cover their budget, particularly because they can say like, your kid needs to be in religious school for at least a year if we're going to do a bar and bat mitzvah with them, because we need to know they have at least a baseline of knowledge. But again, it depends on the community.
I want to get into the Jewish faith. Maybe pretend like this is Judaism 101.
Which I teach.
Which you teach. Perfect. So what does it mean to be Jewish, and how is it different from Christianity?
It's a big question. So a few things I would start with. Judaism is not just a religion. It's what you might call an ethno-religion. There is a familial component. Judaism is passed from mother to child in traditional practice and identity, but you can also join it. Some people have issues with that, but that's their problem. But as far as like conversion is concerned, once you're a convert, you're a Jew. Like if you convert, you're a Jew. Like you're not a convert Jew, you're just a Jew, and that should be enough. So it's possible to be part of the Jewish world and Jewish community without believing in anything. There are plenty of atheist Jews.
Just because you're born into it?
Just because you're born into it, or you're drawn to it. Like I have known staunch atheist communists who converted because they wanted, like it was important to them or their family or somebody they were married to, or they identified with the culture, whatever. Being Jewish is not just believing in something. It is a communal religious tradition. While one can have a personal relationship with God, the best way to get at that is in community. There's certain prayers we can only say in the company of 10 Jewish adults. That really makes it's not just about you and your relationship with God. It's not about there isn't a hierarchy that kind of guides it.
What are some of the religious texts in Judaism? There's the Talmud, there's the Torah. So essentially, it's kind of like concentric circles, although in Rabbinic Judaism, which is the Judaism that you know today, there's basically the written law and the oral law. The written law is Torah and the Jewish Bible. We call it the Tanakh, because it's an acronym for Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, which are the 3 sections. Torah, the first 5 books of Moses. Nevi'im are the prophets. So the 3 big and the 12 small. And then the writings are kind of everything else. It includes Song of Songs and Ecclesiastes and Lamentations and Psalms and Proverbs and all that. So that's the written law. The oral law is a tradition of rabbinic interpretation and decisions that the tradition says were given at the same time as the written law. So we say like Torah from Sinai. The oral law is binding the same way that the written law is, and that the oral law is necessary to understand the written law. Oral law was put down in writing. The tradition kind of being, it was written down in part because the Romans were killing off all the people who had it memorized. Once upon a time, Jewish law was recorded by repeating it to somebody with a good memory until they had it cold. Literally basically human data storage. But human data storage can be stabbed to death by a Roman legionnaire. So we wrote it down to kind of preserve it. So the most common compilation is called the Mishnah, which comes from like repeating the word, like mishaneh, like to repeat or to teach. So there's a lot of connection between memorization and learning in Jewish tradition. Then interpreting that is something called the Gemara,
The Gemara and the Mishnah together are what we call Talmud. And there's two major types of Gemara. One is from the Babylonian Jewish population. One is from the northern Israel, Galilee Jewish population. And the Babylonian one is actually considered authoritative over the one from the Galilee. And that's called the Babylonian Talmud. Now, Jews like to interpret and they like to write. So there's countless documents expanding on or interpreting or commenting on the Talmud. In the 11th century, about a rabbi named Maimonides, or in the Hebrew, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon or Rambam, tried codifying all of this. And so he's kind of like the first rabbi to attempt to like lay it all out in a clear written format about how you're supposed to observe Jewish law. Because up to that point, it was really confusing and nobody had kind of condensed it down. And then over time, there's multiple other attempts to codify, and there's commentaries on these codes and, arguments with them, and kind of like traditions of legal interpretation are transmitted down the generations. And if you're really into it, you can follow the legal logic and how different rabbis come to their conclusions because they sided with this school on this decision, so they had to come to this conclusion. So it's a lot of reading. But ultimately, what are we supposed to do comes down to what have people said about it before who knew what they were talking about? What are our needs today? And who is saying it?
Mm-hmm. Is there anything in Jewish law that you disagree with or have
tons.
conflict with?
Tons. Particularly when it comes to gender roles and gendered issues. Also, requirements on what is and is not acceptable behavior to be in the community. And I can argue with it.
Can you give me some examples of those things?
So one thing that has emerged over time is the idea that women are not obligated to certain commandments. And so the understanding is, well, if they're not obligated, then they shouldn't do it. They don't have to, but they can, has been made into they don't have to, so they can't. Which is, in Jewish tradition, obligation to something is a positive. To be obligated to do something, to be commanded to do something, is the better position. If you have to do it, wonderful. We get to follow these rules, outstanding. And if you don't have to, then you're actually of lower status. So it's and that sort of thing has been used to justify, restricting women's access to education, restricting women's access to, opportunities or livelihoods. I think also there's certain obsessions with lifestyle of the proper lifestyle, the ideal is to do nothing but study all day. If you can get to where you don't have to work and all you need to do is just study Talmud, you have made it. And, I get it, but I do think that there's a need to recognize different people need different things. And that there are plenty of people in the world who the best way for them to be a committed and active Jew is not to sit inside a room and read a book. There are people who really get more out of doing stuff with their hands, being out in the world. There's a lot of meaning to be found in work. And so probably should make room for that.
Do you think Judaism as a whole changes? Is the interpretation changing? Are gender roles or in general treatment of others becoming equal maybe in some pockets here and there?
So I will say Judaism is always changing. One of the defining features of it is that it changes over time because we have to adapt to the world as it comes. Sometimes it goes in directions I'm happy about, sometimes it doesn't, but change is a constant. The main distinctions between the conservative movement and some orthodox elements is how comfortable they are with change at what pace. There's definitely been movements in egalitarianism in the Jewish world, even in some parts of the Orthodox world now. For those who aren't comfortable with calling a woman a rabbi, there are efforts to create a kind of, or to bring forward another category called Maharat, which is like a master of the tradition, which is a rabbi in all but name, that women in some parts of the Orthodox world have become. There's also elements of the Orthodox world where women are rabbis. I personally identify as what I would call a militant egalitarian. Like when I'm in a position of leadership, I will make choices and try and actively move the needle toward gender not being a factor in what you're doing. But that's my agenda. I'm also kind of a militant anti-authoritarian. Like I'd even go so far as to say I am a kind of religious anarchist, and that I think no authority should exist that is not earned by merit and matched by accountability.
I see.
I think the more authority somebody has, the more accountable they need to be. But that's my seeing too many times authority be abused.
You've seen that?
Like every time a priest, a rabbi, a pastor, has an affair or molests a child or steals money or whatever, it makes the job of everyone trying to do the work harder.
Yeah.
And I've seen people who have abused their positions or walk the line, and it drives me nuts because in my thinking, we're supposed to be in this for the right reasons. And if you become a rabbi because you want power and authority, get out.
Did you have to ever confront anybody like that?
Not personally. At least I've seen it in, I've been on the edges of it, but I've never been the direct target of that kind of abuse, and I've never been directly responsible for addressing it.
I want to go back to how Jesus is, the differences between Judaism and Christianity, and how both religions use Jesus Christ in their religions. So,
from a Jewish perspective, Christianity is theologically irrelevant. It's very much relevant culturally. But in terms of I would never need to look at the New Testament in my life if I was just doing Jewish. The only time it's relevant is because I live in a place where Christmas actually exists, right? Things are closed on Christmas Day, and I'm like, what the hell? This isn't Israel. It's not Shabbat. What are you doing? And also, I'm fortunate enough to live in a time and place where Christmas and Easter are not also the days that a bunch of Christians go storming through the Jewish area of town, burning things and trying to kill people. There are traditions in the Jewish world around Christmas. There's a thing called Nittelnacht, which is a kind of European Jewish tradition where Jews will stay up all night on Christmas Eve and do quiet things, specifically because we're on the lookout for Christians coming to hurt us. Because one thing that often happens on Christmas, like midnight mass or Easter Sunday or sermon times in the medieval world especially, priests or pastors would rile up their communities. The main relevance Jesus has is the accusation of Christ killers, or rejection of Christianity, the stubbornness of the Jewish people. Jesus comes up sometimes in Jewish text, but more as if one was to read parts of the Talmud where a Jesus figure is referenced, one would probably be very offended. Because it is the language of an oppressed people kind of using their own private literature to kind of express their frustrations and anger and pain. It's the don't judge people undergoing severe oppression for what they're saying about their oppressors, right? Like, you can only give people so much crap for not being, magnanimous when things are bad. So on that level, Jesus is irrelevant. And, it really is the most generous takes I've seen is of Jesus as being part of the Jewish messianic traditions in the wake of the destruction of the Second Temple, around that period, like the Great Revolt, 70 CE. And in that case, it's Jesus, the Jesus cult was just one of the successful groups that emerged from that time. I would even go so far as to say Rabbinic Judaism is another version of that cult that survived, and essentially because they made the adaptations they needed to survive that radical shift.
Yeah, I didn't know any of that. I thought that Jesus did have some sort of a presence in Judaism just because he's in both Bibles, right?
Nope.
Not in the Old Testament at all.
So,
or it's just
one of them at the main distinction I see between Christianity and Judaism is relationship to text. Christians will read the Hebrew Bible and see Jesus in the way certain things are phrased. Jews will read that same text and be like, no, that is not what it's saying. And the words are there. And I can understand how somebody might read those and go, oh yeah, this is talking about this thing that we believe. But, also from my perspective, it's well, yeah, of course it would be, the language in the New Testament would reflect the Old Testament because they had it. When you're writing the new version, you'd be using language from the old version in your new version to connect them, right? A reboot doesn't ignore the old one. It just tries to give it a new spin.
Sure. So would you say there's an undercurrent of animosity towards, between Jews and Christians?
What animosity there is, I think, is primarily historical rather than theological. Although the way I teach it to my students is Christianity has an inherent theological ambivalence around what to do with Jews. Because on one hand, the new covenant is meant to supersede the old covenant. And kind of early Christianity gave the sense of being the real Jews, being this is, Christians are when Judaism takes its next step. So anybody who's still in that Jewish world, what do you do with them? Are they just stubborn? Because the existence of Jews challenges the supremacy of Christianity in its theology. And that manifested in a lot of uncertainty and chaos and how different Christian communities related to the Jews that were living among them or near them. In a lot of cases, it was dependent almost exclusively on the opinion and the whim of whoever was in charge. The knight, the lord, whatever, in the medieval period especially. But a lot of, I think, what happened in, kind of the modern period is a manifestation of that ambivalence. There's always been the Jewish question in Europe, which is, what do you do with these people who are not quite like us but live among us? And when it was religious distinctions, then, okay, the Jews stay over there and they do their thing, and there's going to be some mixing because humans are humans, but the Jews have their place, everybody else is out here, great. But you could stop being Jewish and become Christian, and if you did that, you were no longer Jewish, and you were allowed into the Christian world. Once it started becoming about race and genetics and blood, then the question became more of a, well, at some point we're probably just going to have to kill them all. Because if you can't mix and you can't change your status and you don't want them there, what do you do?
Where did this persecution of Jews come from all over the world? Like, what is the history of the oppression of Jews?
So
And where does it come from?
my take, which in some cases might be considered a hot one, is there's an aspect of anti-Jewishness and anti-Semitism that is just the full manifestation of humanity's tendency to treat smaller minority groups poorly. You know, it's easy to other people who dress a little different, who do it a little different, and it can reinforce your sense of self by saying we're not like them. So on one hand, it's just standard human practice of being terrible to other people. The ways that I think Judaism is, like, that oppression against Jews is unique, is one in the way that it is part of a narrative of Christian theology, and also a narrative of Muslim theology, that, you know, there's certain elements of ambivalence toward Jews in the various stories that make up different religious traditions. But I mean, the Romans weren't exactly in love with Jews either, and they were polytheists first. I think it has a lot to do with a group of people who have their own customs and practices, who, to a certain extent, will not give those up, even when in a new place. So, like, if Jews aren't eating pork, then it doesn't matter where they are. Like, the food that they're going to eat is not going to be food that has pork in it. No matter what you do. That sets them apart. They pray their way in their languages, in their stuff. They do their thing. When they travel, they have people who are like them that they can connect to in those different places. So I think there really is a sense of, like, these are people who refuse to completely assimilate, who refuse to essentially let themselves disappear into the larger group. And that's always uncomfortable for people. And also, it's just everyone wants a scapegoat.
Yeah. I mean, this has obviously led to, one of the worst genocides in history of the Holocaust. As a rabbi, how has the Holocaust affected your life, the life of your community, and how did you navigate that?
So one, I think Jewish kids grow up knowing about the Holocaust very early. Like, this is one of the things, like, we get it at like 7, 8 sometimes. And there's a lot of thought that's been going into Holocaust education over time. I have some critiques of the use of the Holocaust as a fundraising tactic, or the role of, the Holocaust in grandparents trying to get their kids to marry Jews. The phrase, "Do you want to let Hitler win?" has been uttered at least once in my hearing, which leads to people who are like, I got to marry Jewish, but I don't care about being Jewish, right? Like I think it's also a challenge in that we're still trying to figure out how to remember without reliving. For a lot of my life, a lot of the Holocaust education I got involved role-playing or feeling like we were there, which is useful for remembering, but also tends to kind of transmit generational trauma more clearly. It also leaves Jews in this situation where we are hypersensitive to any criticism, because like any public criticism of a Jew or Jews or a Jewish activity or a group, like, always comes with that, like, are they doing it because they have an issue with what they're doing, or are they doing it because they're Jews? So criticisms often emerge where people who are justifiably critical of a Jewish organization or, let's say, a Jewish state can be like, there's always this, like, what is the origin of that criticism? Because there's certainly plenty of people who hate Jews who are happy to jump on the bandwagon of anything and take, like, if it's a legitimate criticism, they'll jump on it. If it's an illegitimate criticism, they'll jump on it. there's always this fear that any criticism is a threat, which I think leads a lot of my community to engage in irrational behavior because they're scared, or they've been taught to be scared, or and it's been weaponized not just by our enemies, but by people within the Jewish community who have agendas, who want us to behave in certain ways. And when you're scared, it's a lot easier to get you to do things that you wouldn't ordinarily be comfortable doing. So I think having good records of survivors' testimonies, being very clear about like the evidence for the claims about the Holocaust and what happened are essential. I think it's important to maintain a memory of it. I even go so far as to say, I think a specific day dedicated to remembering the Holocaust in the Jewish world is going to be with us for a long time. And it will probably take a very long time for it to transition into one of the many catastrophes that Jews have to remember. It's actually amusing that we're having this talk today because tomorrow night begins the holiday of Tisha B'Av, which in Jewish tradition is rooted in the destruction of the first and second temple, but is also a religious holiday that we frame the entirety of all Jewish catastrophes.
Oh.
So it becomes a memorial for every pogrom, every massacre, every exile. Like, it is kind of like, I see it as a way of making sure that we remember the horrors that have been visited upon us without it being a daily occurrence. Because if we remembered every one of those things on the day it happened, honestly, there would be no day in the calendar where Jews weren't mourning something. So having like a day that is the primary, like we save it for this day so that we can sit in sackcloth and ashes one day a year and beat our chests and read Lamentations and, and suffer because we got to make room for that. But we also need to make sure that it doesn't overtake us.
Yeah, it sounds very beautiful, very cathartic.
But Holocaust Memorial Day, there's the international one, but there's also a one in the Jewish calendar. Like we have a specifically religious holiday kind of framed around it. And so the way I tend to run with it is International Holocaust Memorial Day is about everybody. It's about, I think that's about the genocide that was committed against Jews, Romani, gays, the disabled.
Cambodians. This is a fascinating conversation. It's honestly very hard for me to interview you because my mind is just going like in so many different directions. And every once in a while I just get amazed at like the encyclopedic knowledge of your vocabulary.
I'm a nerd. I am just a nerd.
Yeah, so I catch myself just spacing out like, what was that? What did he say? And then like, oh, that's just like Cambodia. And like, oh, this reminds me of this question over here. So I'm doing my best.
Well, I think one thing that stands out to me, though, is that the Holocaust as a genocide has so much attention. And I think because it was so well documented, it was so central to a very European-centered situation that, like, it is the easiest genocide that we can point to and say this happened.
Okay.
But I think, and this is something I think is a weakness in the Jewish world, is that because it was such a big deal for us, we sometimes forget that, like, while it was unique in its own particular details, it isn't unique in history. There have been genocides, countless genocides. I mean, Armenians are still trying to get the genocide that happened to them recognized. I mean, I can't remember the number of people I know who celebrated Henry Kissinger's death, right? Like, and like, the Cambodian massacres were not that isn't as well known.
How does Judaism reconcile a loving God with the existence of suffering and evil or whatever it is that causes something like genocide to occur?
So it's a tricky question because you're going to get a lot of different answers.
Yeah.
The starting point I would go with is that Jewish tradition has never describes God as the creator of good and evil. So that it's not, God isn't just the good stuff. God created the world as it is. Some people tend to go the route of God gave humans free will and so will not force humans to do the right thing. In some ways, it's kind of where I lean. But there is kind of a whole body of literature of Judaism after the Holocaust. Like theology post-Holocaust is different than theology pre-Holocaust. Because the problem of evil reigns it is much larger in people's imagining than before. Some people will say, that was the Germans, whatever, or some people will go so far as to say the Holocaust happened so Israel could exist. I'm not a huge fan of that deterministic sort of thing. I think it demeans the loss of life, the sacrifices, not the evitability of it, if we're going to play with words instead of inevitability, that it didn't have to happen, but we let it happen, or it did happen. My own take is I do not believe that God intercedes directly, rather that God is that voice that whispers to us in every moment what the optimal choice we can make is. And that is how God influences the world. It's one phrase that has always stuck with me is God was with the victims, not the perpetrators. God was being massacred with God's people, not with the guard, but with the inmate. But if you believe in an all-powerful God, that's a theological problem. And a lot of the ways I've seen it manifested is, if you believe God is all good, all knowing, and all powerful, that's the same issue as saying everything happens for a reason. As a matter of fact, I think it's the kind of more philosophically framed way of saying everything happens for a reason. And you cannot tell that to a Holocaust survivor. You cannot tell that to, you can't tell a victim that what happened was good actually. So instead, you have to actually wrestle with what of those three things are you willing to give up in your belief? Is God all knowing, but not all powerful or all good? Is God all knowing and all good, but not all powerful? Is God, all powerful and all knowing, but not good? That one would be consistent with lived experience, right? If terrible things are happening and God knows they're going to happen, but God isn't good, okay, God's a tyrant. That's consistent, but not comforting, or really, it's a God you worship because you don't want to die, not a God you worship because you want to worship God. Or if God is all good and all powerful, but not all knowing, then God is Superman, right?
So what do you think?
I tend to favor the abandonment of all powerful, if I have to choose.
What do you mean?
So again, in my theology, there's a tradition in Jewish mysticism called Lurianic Kabbalah, and it's kind of a story of how things became. And in it, there's a description of God contracting God's self to make room for creation. Because if God is all, then there can't be anything else. So the term is tzimtzum, literally contracting. And in that, and the Lurianic narrative is God contracts but creates divine vessels so that God's presence can be felt in creation. But upon contact with the mundane reality of creation, those vessels shatter into billions, millions, billions of pieces. And it's our job to help liberate those pieces from the base matter that they've been encased in so they can be kind of elevated and restore these vessels so God's presence can be felt in full in the world. I tend to take that story and say God's contraction was not just physical space, but also power. Like, certain like theories of power dynamics, if one person has all the power, then then nobody has power. So God sacrifices the power of control over what happens in the hopes of making something more. So if I was to describe creation, God saw God's self and wanted more and was willing to take a risk. God created and allowed that creation to evolve in its own way. At this point in that process, it's us. And as things become more and more complicated and complex over time, feeling creatures emerge, and then thinking creatures emerge, and we're the feeling, thinking creature. We are the first manifestations of an aspect of creation that can reflect directly upon God. So our choices influence God, and God influences our choices. And in that, God is vulnerable, because if God is connected to everything that exists, then God is vulnerable to the choices everything makes. And so we actually have a burden of responsibility that our choices, how we conduct ourselves, will influence whether or not God is good, will dictate whether or not the experiment was worth it. God took a risk in the hope of something more, because without that risk, there could never be anything more. And so we've got a job to live up to that. Can we be more than what we are?
Do you feel like, we were talking about the Holocaust, do you feel like that plays a role in what's happening in Israel and Palestine right now?
I do. So let me first say, there's a lot of ambivalence in the Jewish community over the term genocide, particularly because of the Holocaust, and a sense of like efforts to, either demean the Holocaust or elevate other things by using it as an analogy. And I think part of that is that hypersensitivity, because there's been plenty of times where people have invoked the Holocaust for very stupid things, right? Like, I think you hear it sometimes what is it like, so it's like, yes, my inability to say anti-trans things is like I'm a Holocaust survivor, like, I'm a Holocaust victim. They're silencing me. When it comes to Palestine, I think there's a lot of ambivalence and concern because, one, as Jews don't tend to grow up thinking of themselves as having power. And when you come from a place where you're kind of defaulted as a victim of others, it can be very difficult to see yourself as the one in control or having power. I think that plays a part in Israeli behavior and kind of American Jewish responses to what's happening. So I will say, I don't care if you use the term genocide or not. I do care that a lot of people are dying who shouldn't be. And harm is being inflicted in ways that, to my thinking, are not necessary for what they are stated to be being used for. So that's my politic way of saying where I fall on the Israel-Palestine issues. But I do think there is a certain amount of the victims of trauma can sometimes become the perpetrators of it. There's a certain, that in some ways, Hitler's behavior is still acting out. Like the idea of wiping out a people or of clearing an area of a certain group so that your group can have it, or just this idea that we shouldn't be trying to make the best of the circumstances we have and trying to force change. My ideal is that people live where they want to live and you figure it out. Like you shouldn't have a line saying it has to be Jews here or Palestinians there. Like these are people that live there, and we got to figure out a way for everybody to be able to live together.
Yeah.
And my part as an American Jew is sometimes to be an American and sometimes to be a Jew. Like I will always have space for Jews who are struggling or in pain or who've lost family members, or who have kids in Israel or anything like that, because one, it's my job, and two, it's my people. Like I always have to, like, I'm always going to have room to sit with that. At the same time, I don't think what's happening is justified. I don't think it's okay. And I think that a lot of what's happening is because there is no sense of accountability or consequence for what's happening, for what's being done. And I think part of that is because the American Jewish community has this assumption that we're all on the same page. And as a result, there's been a lot of alienation among Jews, especially younger Jews, who do not fall into line with, Israel no matter what. And I think it's doing harm because, to me, the most beautiful parts of Jewish community and culture is the ability to have disparate opinions, to disagree vehemently on many issues and still be able to have dinner together. Like, the whole point is to be able to voice different opinions, careful, like, thoughtful ones. The more effort you put into actually, like, making sure your opinions are informed and conscious, the better. But you're allowed, like, there should be room for, a staunch, committed, revisionist Zionist and an anti-Zionist to have dinner together, to be in the same synagogue. Like, the institution should not be used to force out either one.
Yeah. Well, there is consequences, just not here in the States. But I mean, this war is going to continue to some degree for who knows how long, centuries. They're creating so many enemies, and it's never going to end, in my opinion. And the parallels are so clear. Even the dehumanization of Palestinians and what they're doing, mass graves, what they're doing to them in prisons, it just echoes the Holocaust.
This is why I say it's important for people to recognize that although particular manifestations are unique for any genocide, it is not a unique phenomenon for any group. Like, it just, like, there's going to be differences in how things happen. The cultures that are perpetuating it, the cultures that are being targeted, like, the unique features of those are going to influence how it plays out. But a concentration camp or a prison, like, those are just different names.
Yeah.
Like, and carpet bombing a town is carpet bombing a town.
Well, in Israel's, to play devil's advocate, they would say it's for their safety. They're just trying to survive. And it's true. They're being attacked on all fronts all the time. And they need to kill these people for their own safety.
The problem we run into, even with that, like, trying to protect yourself, fine. I think, honestly, like, yeah, there's going to be people who are like, no, Jews can't defend themselves, they need to die. Like, that, there's always going to be that group. But I think part of that, that Holocaust information, that sense of we're on the precipice of annihilation every second, the hypervigilance that comes from that, like, that's the thing that justifies harming other people for a sense of safety. Because the official party line in Israel is that this needs to happen to root out the people who want to kill Jews. And it won't be successful unless they root out the people the Hamas and everything that's done this. And from October 9th until, like, on, that's kind of been the official, like, stance. But at no point has anybody explained how that's going to actually work. Because you can't annihilate an ideology. You also can't argue that, as much as I don't think there's a legitimate reason to harm civilians, particularly in the ways that were harmed on October 7th, that doesn't justify doing the same. And that's not going, like, it was effective. It got people's attention. It changed the conversation. And if you create a world in which the only way that happens is through horrific acts, then you can't ignore your culpability in creating that condition. The victims were not responsible. Victims did not deserve to die. But the societies that are perpetuating this status quo are culpable for the circumstances that led to it. And it really comes down to you cannot treat a people the way that Palestinians have been treated and expect anything else. If the only way that you can get any movement on things that you need is to kidnap and murder thousands of people, then there's going to be people who are going to take that. You don't have to be a monster. At the end of the day, I don't think Hamas are monsters. I'm not going to mourn the death of anybody who was involved in the attack. But I don't think they're monsters. I don't think they're insane. I think there are people who've been pushed to a certain point, and there's people who take advantage of that for their own ends. Just as I think the same for a lot of Israelis. And I think Israel needs to be aware that it is culpable for the status quo that it's perpetuated. And, one thing that can be said for October 7th is it made it clear that the way things were could not be sustained. Unfortunately, the people in power look at this as an opportunity, not as a consequence. And I have more in common with a Palestinian living in Gaza City than I do with the current political leadership of Israel.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm a rabbi.
How does that make you feel to say that? Are you scared of the repercussions of that statement or anything that you said?
So I don't
community?
In this, I don't think I said anything that's outrageous. I am fundamentally opposed to Benjamin Netanyahu and his government. I am 110% behind the Israelis who are trying to stop this, who are trying to find ways to live with their neighbors. I think at the end of the day, the only solution comes from something that both Palestinians and Israelis can live with. No population should be getting kicked out anywhere. Just not. I'm not a big fan of forced migration for anybody. It sucks. No forced migration in human history has ever ended well. But I also know that there's many Jews in LA and especially that, consider anybody who is not kill them all for the sake of the Jewish people is an enemy. And to those people, I got to say, I'm not your enemy. I'm just not willing to lose our soul for our survival.
Yeah, we'll see how this whole thing plays out. It's really fascinating how it's touched the world.
It's been especially hard for me because people I have looked up to and seen as mentors and teachers have said things in the last 7 months that I find truly reprehensible. And for a while, I stopped going to synagogue because I didn't want to have to walk out during the sermon.
What would they say?
Just the kind of the Israel has a right to defend itself, an absolute lack of recognition of the humanity of Palestinians. It's good versus evil. This language I think is harmful. But out of respect for the people saying it, I'd rather not be there than be there and walk out. I'm trying to find that line of I reject what you're saying, but I also have to respect but I also have immense respect for what you taught me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what you taught me does not seem to be what you're espousing.
Have you ever confronted them or anybody else confronted them about these things?
No, and it's hard because right now, Jewish institutions are very much in that world. But as time goes on, it's going to have to happen. Although I think more and more I may end up having to just kind of find my own place and do my thing and not be too concerned with what the larger establishment says. just going to have to live with not being popular.
You'll find your niche.
I didn't get into this to be popular. I got into this because I wanted to have some sort of confluence of who I am and what I do.
But you're not in it now anyways. You stopped being a rabbi a little while ago, right?
Well, I'm not on a pulpit, but I haven't stopped being a rabbi.
Okay, you're not
And
you're
I
not
teach,
working. You're not...
well, I've been teaching online some Intro to Judaism classes.
Oh, okay.
So I've worked with, this point, probably like 400 or 500 students.
Oh, wow.
Who are considering conversion.
Mm-hmm.
That's been my thing.
Wow.
And I love it.
Converting from
Anything to Judaism.
anything. That's amazing.
In some cases, people who are patrilineally Jewish, but not Jewish according to Jewish law, who wanted to kind of like get the official stamp.
Yeah, what are the types of people that are looking to convert?
So there's Christians who have decided that Judaism is the truth. Those people are intense, very interesting folks. You can kind of tell by the language they use.
Okay.
You've got people who are Jewish but don't really know much, who want to like kind of get some ground level info. You've got people who are converting in part because their spouse wants them to, or their future spouse wants them to. You got people who've grown up Jewish but were not technically by Jewish law Jewish. You've got people who came to it because of friends that they had. A lot of people like college or high school friends when they grew up like around Jewish communities and families because of friends, and they loved it. Some people just kind of, it clicked for them in college.
They throw great parties.
We got some game, like we do some good food.
Yeah. The weddings are insane.
Also, I think that something that people really often like get drawn to is like Shabbat dinner. Like the idea that even like secular families, people who have no other Jewish thing in their life, always have dinner with family on Friday night. Always. And I know some people who are like, I went, like, it's like their entire extended family every Friday night. Like 30, 40 people every Friday.
Yeah.
And the food is great, and the alcohol flows, and they sing, and like, but that idea of like, I think there are things in Jewish practice that are very much a salve or a corrective for parts of our society and culture. Like that sense of belonging, community, connection, tradition, like, feeling like you're a part of something. Or seeing a family that actually stays together.
Do you know much about the Jews in Africa?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Like
their background, how they got there.
Which group are we talking? Ethiopian or Ugandan?
Let's start with Ethiopia, I guess.
I think my best recollection, and I'm not an expert on this, is the Ethiopian Jewish community. Essentially, there's some certain tribes or groups in Ethiopia who, for as long as anybody can remember, have practiced done certain things and behaved in certain ways that were very much like Jewish coded. Think same days off, lighting candles, certain food avoidance. Like there's just this like very strong correlation between tribal practices and certain Jewish practices. And so the theory is that these are descendants of Israelites and Judeans who kind of migrated toward Ethiopia because it's not that far, and settled there. And after the destruction of the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom, we're just stayed. And so there's theories like they might be part of like a lost tribe, but regardless, they had connections with the Jewish world, and at a point where they were being persecuted because they were different, there was a massive effort to airlift a huge number of Ethiopian Jews to Israel. And so today, there's a significant population of African Jews from Ethiopia that are just part of society. And, they have to deal with similar racism issues as they might in the U.S. because they're black. But, it's very much a distinct community. Slightly more humorous is the Ugandan Jewish population.
How so?
So my best understanding is that the current tribe of Jewish Ugandans, under British rule, we're told they had to convert to Christianity. And instead, as a way of being like, to hell with you, they converted to Judaism.
Okay.
And they didn't really necessarily know what that meant at the time, but eventually they reached out, and in an interesting twist, the first ordained rabbi of the Ugandan Jewish community actually went to the same school I did.
Wow.
Rabbi Gershon, who also, by the way, is a member of the Ugandan parliament. He's a representative for his area now. But there's video and photography of his installation. There's a tradition of installing a rabbi in the community that they're now serving. And usually teachers, mentors, leaders will come and be there to recognize it. It's a big deal when you say okay, this person is now the rabbi of this community. They're in charge of the religious life of these people. And they treated his teachers like kings, like straight up kings.
Wow. Because
these were the teachers of their rabbi. So the Abu Yadaya community in Uganda, there's a whole tribe that is just Jewish.
Yeah.
And they sent another guy and his family to LA, who's I think still currently studying to be a rabbi, because they need another rabbi.
Yeah. So what's next for you? You don't have a pulpit at the moment. So what was your decision to move out of there or stop doing that? And what are you doing now?
The main reason I stepped away from the pulpit and from full-time work at the moment is because I have two elderly parents. My dad has Alzheimer's and is in a long-term care facility in the Valley. My mom fell and injured herself pretty badly last year and has been living with me as she recovers. So that's been part of it, is I needed to be available. And also I needed a break from being a pulpit rabbi, considering my first 3 years began with being new and then COVID. I learned to rabbi in the pandemic.
Gotcha.
A lot of people, including me, had to learn to reinvent Jewish life when we're not really supposed to use electricity or technology on Shabbat.
Yeah.
And we basically had to go some people, some communities like mine, were well, guess we're going on Zoom. And I led a lot of services from my guest bedroom in my house. In Arizona. My cat became a well-known component of services because she has a loose relationship with personal space when it comes to me. And so the number of times that she would just start crawling up my chest as I'm in the middle of leading a prayer, or I'm giving a sermon and she decides that she needs to be on my head.
What's your cat's name?
So I have 3. The one I'm talking about is Tanith.
Tanith.
She is a little black cat who fell in love with me the second she met me and decided she was going home with me.
Yeah.
And she has not let me forget that.
Yeah. And what are the other 2?
I have a Lynx Point Siamese named Genevieve, goes by Jenny. And I recently adopted another black cat who is much larger, named Saru.
Nice. I have a black cat also. His name is Cusco. You met him earlier.
Yes. I'm disappointed he has not come and got to know me.
He doesn't come out when people are here. Sometimes, but whenever I do interviews, he doesn't come out. And if there's a lot of people here, he certainly won't come out. but there is just like one or two of my friends who he will come out for. But yeah, he's never come out for an interview for sure.
I'm definitely one of those people if that I go to somebody's house.
He did smell your shoes earlier.
Yeah, no, I don't think he was upset by me.
Yeah.
But I am one of those people that would vastly prefer to socialize with the cats and dogs in the house than the people.
Yeah. Is there what is like the treatment of, what is the thought of animals in Judaism? Do they look down on them? Is there a place for animals in the religion, or?
It can be complicated because there are certain behaviors that we would normally engage with pets that would be forbidden on certain days. Like you're not supposed to brush or comb an animal on Shabbat because it might be a kind of labor. And some people do have issues with dogs, like because biblically dogs are not really seen all that kindly.
Why not?
They're just the text seems to treat them as vermin almost, like wild dogs. Like the greatest insult is that Jezebel was eaten by wild dogs. Also, there's some religious issues with spaying and neutering. There's one is not supposed to interfere with an animal's ability to be fruitful and multiply, but also spay and neuter your pets. At the end of the day, though, like nowadays, it's normal. Most American Jews treat animals like every American.
Yeah.
And there's just, I don't know, the rabbi's cat is an ongoing kind of trend.
Oh, is that a thing? Rabbis have cats?
Yeah, a lot of rabbis I know have cats.
Yeah. And they clean your energy.
My therapist has considered my cat her co-therapist since they met.
Yeah.
No, when I've had some disassociative episodes or things like that, it's one of the things that really brings me back to my body is having my cat on my chest and just having her purr.
Yeah.
And
they can tell,
Yeah.
they know when you're upset or whatever.
And this cat, especially Tana, she's unique among all the animals I've had. I call her my familiar at this point because she's more familiar than pet. She's a menace, and she can be dumb as bricks sometimes. Like she almost killed herself eating a Fitbit wristband, and so all the rubber congealed in her gut.
Yeah.
Like she almost killed herself.
Yeah.
But no, it's definitely she has exhibited an affection and investment in me that has it's not because I did anything. It's not a quid pro quo. Like she comes and snuggles with me after she eats, not before. Like, most cats, they'll be really sweet and affectionate when they want food. This one, she'll be most affectionate after she's eaten. Like it has done more wonders for my sense of self-worth than anything else, that there's just this cat, a creature who will never do anything they don't want to do. Right? Like their boundaries are clear. If they don't want you, they will not. And for something like that to be like, oh yeah, no, I just love you. Like I just want to, like I am happiest when I am on you. Like that, it's hard to be mean to yourself when a random cat is like, no, you're the best.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Because they're not lying, they're not manipulating, there's no dissembling. It's just like, no, I wouldn't look at you if I didn't want to look at you.
Yeah.
Like, you feed me, you clean my litter box, no matter what. I don't have to do anything to get that.
Yeah, I think most animals are that way. It's hard for an animal to be deceiving. Maybe like a monkey or something.
I've met cats and dogs who are manipulative. They know how to they know how to get you. Like they train you.
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, it's although sometimes the reaction is not, oh, I love you, when they literally they lose their balance and then pull themselves up on your leg or back. 6 pounds actually weighs a lot when it's got claws in your skin.
Oh yeah, you don't cut her claws?
I do.
When you can, yeah.
But she sharpens them.
Yeah, for sure. How are your parents doing?
My dad is kind of slowly degenerating. He's still there. He still recognizes me when I see him. We can still talk. But he has trouble remembering like a couple minutes. His short-term memory shot. It is obvious that he has dementia and Alzheimer's. My mom is very impatient with her recovery. And sometimes I have to help her with that.
Was it an accident?
She was climbing the stairs with too much in her hands, and she fell. And she fell half a flight of stairs. We're lucky she didn't break her skull, but she broke her hip and she broke her shoulder.
She's recovering. She's doing better.
Yeah, she can walk. She drives. She's going out. Main issues right now is just very limited energy.
Do you think what are your plans? Are you going to go back to the pulpit? Do you think you'll be in this situation much longer?
I don't know. I do think I'm keeping my eye out for things. I'm trying to find part-time and pickup work. But also I've kind of thrown myself into developing myself as a musician, because it's one of those things that I felt like I wanted to do the most on the pulpit and did not have the time or opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
It's really hard to study music when you are working 60-hour weeks.
Yeah.
Especially when you'd have to be doing it solo or independently.
Oh, they made you sing at your last pulpit.
Yeah. Okay. I usually was singing about 3.5 to 4 hours a week minimum.
I heard you singing before. There's recordings on it online. So it's coming along. It sounds good.
I feel like I've made a lot of progress in the last year, especially the last couple months.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to where it goes.
Cool.
Because
me too.
there is a part of me that's like, maybe I just go into this for a living and do the rabbi thing for fun.
How would that be? Like do what for a living exactly?
Be a musician.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Would you be like a songwriter or singing in a choir, or like what type of avenue within music?
Probably a lot of religious singing, just because I'm already in the world.
Yeah.
But also, I'm also interested in composition and songwriting. I write sometimes on the side. Some people say I have a facility with words, so
Write some lyrics.
Yeah.
Okay, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. Is there anything else that you want to talk about or you want to mention? Anything else going on in your life that you want people to know about?
Pay attention to any events that might be going on in the LA area that might encourage ceasefires, or make sure, and also be kind to your to your neighbor Jews and non-Jews alike, because things are tough. Yeah. And everybody's on edge, and we could use a lot more, love.
Have you received any anti-Semitism or any backlash?
No, but I've also been very careful, and I'm not currently quite out in front of people as much.
Yeah.
The times I am more publicly Jewish at our community college, it's actually been fine. And because I am who I am, and sometimes flag my concern for the well-being of others, have been able to allay any fears that other people might have that I'm outwardly Jewish. I don't speak for any official Jewish organization on campus, though.
Yeah. It's not that subtle, though, that, your Jewishness.
No. I have no reason to be subtle.
Yeah.
I try not to throw around the title, my title all that much, but it's gonna come out.
Yeah. In terms of ceasefire, are you involved in those communities? Do you know about those events or anything?
I've been doing a little bit of work with a few organizations.
Okay.
I'm particularly interested in, my main interest in working with them is, one, to get to know people, and two, to try and help build a better bridge between them and mainstream Jewish institutions. Just because I think it's ridiculous that there's this divide.
Yeah. What are they called?
The group I'm working with is called If Not Now. Yeah. Their official mission goals is a better future for Israelis and Palestinians. But mainly they're focused on things that we can do as American Jews and connected people to help bring that about.
Cool. I'm really interested in getting more information about them.
And founded by, and one of the original founders is actually a Valley kid.
Oh, okay. So they're young.
Yeah.
Well, you said kid, so just
Like kid, like
yeah.
she's been in a movie or two since. I think she's in her 30s now.
Oh, she's an actor.
No, she's